Although the markets feel a little bit boring, we could potentially be on the cusp of a little bit of volatility and incoming move. In today's show, I'll show you exactly why that is the case and which direction is the most likely outcome for this move. So stay tuned until the very end. And a big congratulations if you've made it this far, because the soldiers are falling, right? It is definitely getting quite boring out there. But if you have a look at this chart over here, this is the USDT dominance, which we did outline yesterday. It's on the hourly chart, and you're really reaching into that apex. The apex of the move over here, which we can extend this maybe just a little bit further. It basically suggests that by today, we should be leaving this zone over here, either a breakout towards the upside or a breakdown towards the downside. Now, of course, remember the USDT dominance trades inversely to the rest of the market, which means if this does break up, that means the market's going down. If this does break down, that means that the rest of the market is going to be going towards the upside. So we'll keep a very, very, very close eye on this. I've adjusted ever so slightly the downsloping trend line just because these wicks have had so much respect for it that I just thought it's fitting. So very, 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 very close. We'll extend this a little bit further. Now, what are the chances that things, don't break out or break down and you just do this and you just move sideways? That's possible, but it's very, very, very unlikely. Most of the time, you'll either see a breakdown or a breakup. So I think it's high time to pay attention as price moves into that area. We'll revisit this chart in just a moment. Let's have a look at the banter bubbles. Of course, just very quickly, since this is coming down, you have a little bit of a short-term move towards the upside. Some of the coins turning green. Is it sustainable? Will it last? That is the big question. The $1 million question, or even in Michael Saylor's case, the multi-billion-dollar question is, will it last, right? Will that short-term pump last? And we'll look for opportunities today. Interestingly enough, in terms of the Monday range trade, where we look for a sweep either above the high or the low of the Monday range, well, we haven't swept any side yet, right? Price is still consolidating very similarly to USDT dominance, capped in the apex of that triangle, waiting for a big move. And I think that we should see it soon. I do want to remind you, markets will be closed for a lot of this week. There's US holidays coming up. I think it's like Thursday, Friday, and Monday or something like that. Just be aware of that. I'll double check my facts for tomorrow, but that probably makes a less liquid market, which means it's easier to move price action. And you'll see when we look at the whale trade stats in a moment, the volatility is very, very, very low, right? So one thing I wanted to cover over here, and I just found this kind of interesting, it's the USDT dominance. Not the USDT dominance, the big dominance, which is actually the US dollar index, right? So like the USDT dominance, but for US markets. And what I saw over here is in 2014, you had about a 6%, 7% drop at 6.9% before putting in a massive pump that led into the crypto bear market. And then if you look over here in 2020, leading into 2021, that was your bull market. Once you found the bottom and you crashed, you moved aggressively towards the upside. That was 13.4%. So pay attention to those numbers, 6.9, 13.4. And then the most recent one that we've had, essentially coming all the way down the bottom over here, essentially could mark the end of the bull market. So far, that looks to be the case, 12.73%. Now, what I did is I took the fractal of that one, and I took the fractal of this one, if I just move my head out the way. So this one and this one, that's the 2014-15 bear market. And then the 2021 bear market that found its low in 2023 or 2022, December 2023, January. Just looking at it out of interest, this is what it looks like, right? If you were to follow that trajectory, will it follow suit? I don't know. We'll see what happens over here. But if it follows like 2021 to 2022, you can see the move is pretty aggressive. Following the purple trajectory, you might put in a little bit of a pullback over there and then start to mark your way up. And then aggressively, you find your way running towards the upside. What's interesting about this is if you subscribe to the 4-year cycle theory, whereby Bitcoin plays out these 4-year cycles, 3 years up and 1 year down, well, October was the top, which means October should therefore be the bottom in 2026, which should therefore equate to the top on the US dollar index. So where's October, right? If we mark off October and we'll go like mid-October to keep it pretty neutral, pretty interesting, very interesting, right? Because that would mean that you're probably going to follow some sort of a trajectory on the DXY similar to what occurred over here in 2021 and 2022, which found the Bitcoin bottom, led Bitcoin into the bear market. So I think it's something to pay attention to. And there's a question, right? What happened last Thanksgiving? Run that through Grok or ChatGPT and find out the numbers. Last Thanksgiving was probably okay because we in November, leading into November, at least October, November. What month are we in? We're in November, right? Get so confused with these times, right? Last November 2024, price was, of course, in price discovery mode, leading to new all-time highs. But what you should look at is the prior Novembers, specifically 4 Novembers ago, because that would have led you into the prior bear market. And usually it's always those memes going around how the family are like, asking you about crypto and how's your crypto portfolio and things like that at the dinner table around Thanksgiving. So oftentimes there is a bit of a dip, especially in a post-halving year and a post-election year, which is what we're currently in. So I think that's food for thought. We'll keep an eye out on this. I do think that will struggle on USDT, or excuse me, on DXY to get through that pink zone over there. There's going to be massive resistance coming in at 103 to 105. But at the moment, the trends are up. High highs and high lows. Continue to monitor that. We have gold over here really pressing into this, threatening for a real breakout. We obviously entered into that trade early on this lower high that occurred. I'm just updating you because I want to remind you once again, just so no one gets wrecked out there, your stop should be moved to break even. There's no chance that you can lose on this trade over here. If it does break out later on, I'm going to look for another opportunity later on. And then we have silver doing exactly the same thing over here. Stops are moved to break even. We're still in profit over there. And then I'll fast forward to MicroStrategy just to update you there. We did take 75% profits on the short trade over here. And I do still subscribe to the probability being higher than not that this is going to bounce. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken the profit, right? If I thought this was heavy and going to fall through, I wouldn't have taken profits over there on the short trade. But what I'll be watching over here is if it maintains some sideways price action for a couple of days or weeks, maybe into the end of the year, I might just reallocate that 75% back into the short trade. So if there is going to be a bounce, I'd expect that bounce to happen sooner rather than later. If it just simply ranges and moves sideways over here, that's actually going to be incredibly more bearish for MicroStrategy and lead to a higher chance that this will begin to fall through. Alrighty, so pay attention to that. Guide Energy says shorting Monad. Maybe star that. Okay, I'll star that comment over there. Keep that up for us, Hardest, just now. Not yet, but later remind me to bring up Monad. It was one of the most hyped launches and one of the most promising layer ones that's out there, and it just came out. So I think we should have a look at that chart as well towards the end of the stream. Let's quickly check the rest of the market. So S&P 500 as well had a change of character over here by taking out that 6,800 level. We said watch for resistance into the zone. It did manage to break through that, but the other markets haven't done that. Like the Dow Jones, right? Maybe they're lagging. Maybe you'll see them come for those levels pretty soon. Need to take out that 4,400. You did at least get above 4,688. So at least that's one good sign over there. And then we can go on to the NASDAQ over here. NASDAQ slightly lagging the S&P 500. So it looks like the stock markets are still absorbing that liquidity and want to go higher. And that kind of brings me to that question, right? Which market actually presents the best risk to reward ratio? Is it going to be crypto, AI, commodities, or something else, which you can let us know in the comment section over there. So far, 61% of you still believe crypto provides the best risk to reward opportunity in the markets. I don't know if I agree. I'm not saying I disagree. I think it's very select. I think that if you isolate this question to Bitcoin only, maybe Bitcoin presents a decent risk to reward ratio, but only if Bitcoin can drop down into some of those low regions that we have outlined, which I'll show you in a moment, like this 70K zone. That's going to present a very, very good risk to reward opportunity because you can just place your stop underneath some of those previous lows over there, and there should be some kind of relief. But anyways, stock markets want higher. Liquidity is still flowing into the S&P 500 as well as into gold and silver. Now, of course, I'm short on gold and silver, but just because I think the risk to reward for the downside move when it comes is going to be massive. And we were very strategic and wise about how we entered into that trade. I said we'll never blindly enter into that. And if it goes higher, we're willing to take that on the chin. We can't lose any money at this point, right? So if you do want to trade the traditional markets, remember the traders in Whale Room are dropping like tons of trades, day trades, weekly trades, monthly trades, absolutely crushing it over there. Full TPs across the board. We have Farouk, who's basically just now full-time gold trader. I don't even think he trades crypto anymore. everything is just gold, gold, gold. But if you do want to get involved with these trades, right? Black Friday is still on. I'll have to pull up the screen in a moment to just double check how many places we have left. But I think we're almost at full capacity. Yesterday, we were at like 83% when we did the YouTube video. You have 48% off, right? 48% off. Sign up, claim your Black Friday code. You have to copy paste that in to apply that code. So let's look at the dashboard over here, see what's going on, what's happening in the mix of things over here. The sentiment is still hanging around those lows. Of course, one of the signs that you look towards if you want to start to see a bottom getting carved out. Now, this can take time. You have to be aware of that, right? This can take time. The trends are down, which means any bounces that occur are probably going to be lower highs. Nothing has changed in that regard. And it might take weeks to even months to flip that on the dailies and the weeklies, etc. So the long to short ratio, only a negative 1.28% skew. It's not that aggressive. This is what I specifically wanted to highlight going into these holidays like Thanksgiving, etc. Very, very, very low liquidations, right? 24-hour liquidations, 300 million, and actually split pretty evenly. It's almost 50-50 between longs and shorts getting liquidated, which just advocates that tight trading range. As you move into the apex over here, things are very, very, very tight. And if you haven't even swept the high or the low and you're getting liquidated, guys, I'm just going to tell you the truth. You're taking on too much risk. You don't have an edge. You haven't even swept the Monday high or low. If you're getting liquidated in the last 24 hours, I feel like you're just doing the willy-nilly thing and you're just like thumb sucking and just throwing a trade on the table for the sake of it, right? Remember, you don't need to trade every single day. You do not need to trade every single day. You'll lose a lot of money. Be careful, right? Be careful. And let's look at the daily exchange volume. Also, one of our very own crypto liquidity indexes, if you will. This is what we use this chart for. It is still under pressure, No new money coming into the market. And ultimately, which way is it going to break? If you do start to lose these lows at 45 billion, very dangerous sign. Do you remember how we were studying the RSI in the weekly time frame? I don't have that chart on hand right now, but we're studying the RSI in the weekly time frame, and it was hanging around those 44s. We said historically, you do find major lows. That's bulls' time to shine and strike back, and they failed. And the RSI catapulted much lower. This is the same thing. If that daily exchange volume starts to break below 44, very similar to the RSI, it was also at 44, 45. You wanted to see that RSI hold that level and specifically reclaim 50 as quick as possible. Well, in this instance, 44 billion, if you break below 44 billion, you're going to be taking out these lows. Liquidity is going to dry up and the prices are going to basically just bleed out across the board within crypto, which is already the case in a lot of altcoins. So be very, very, very careful. And you'll probably see further ETF outflows over there on both Bitcoin and ETH on the weekly time frame. Let's quickly see what that daily looks like. How were the flows yesterday? A little bit positive, slightly positive, but nothing meaningful. Absolutely nothing meaningful. The way that I'll treat this, though, is if you do see a large liquidation, and let's just quickly get the rest of the history. Not liquidation, excuse me. Large outflows. If I see large outflows similar in size where we saw it was almost $1 billion, right? Almost $1 billion. That happened in February, on February the 25th, 2025. Shortly after that, that led to a major low where Bitcoin actually found its low at $82,000. So if we see similar size outflows, which have come very, very, very close, that's where you start to hunt for that bottoming process. But you need to be wise and very precise about your entries into those trades. And I want to show you in today's video exactly what that would look like on the price chart. So do not go anywhere. I want to show you exactly the profile of what I want to see before I actually pull the trigger for a very sizable spot trade. This is where I'll play, call it, the dead cat bounce. This is where I'll play that relief rally, which will give us 20 to 30% as a high probability trade. So do not go anywhere. I'll show you exactly what that looks like. And then also, I have a very special announcement for you guys today as well. So do not go anywhere, right? Stay until the very end. Liquidity building up, but this is minuscule. It shows you the books are cleared. There's nothing in there. There's no juice left in the tank, right? When you see the liquidations at 300 million for 24 hours, and then you see this over here, it's just true gamblers getting wrecked in the market. That's the truth. Those are the people that are getting rinsed over here, which is why I said if you're getting liquidated and you haven't even traded above Monday high or low, you're just range bound in a very small range, you are taking on too much leverage. It's as simple as that. So lining up what I'm looking for in terms of the profile, this is a floating funding rate for the week. It hasn't closed. You have to wait for the week to close to confirm this. But we haven't seen meaningful negative funding yet, which is unbelievable considering that price has come down from high to low. I mean, what has price come down from high to low? Is this the high over here? 126. To consider that Bitcoin has dropped 36% or $46,000, 46K down from high to low, and the funding didn't go negative. I mean, that tells you that there is still more of an unwind that could theoretically take place. So what am I looking for? And I want to get into that on the weekly chart. So let's actually just move these up. We'll move these up like that. So what I'm looking for is if I get a bit of a deeper correction over here, which means price has to drop down further to get that negative funding. If we see something like that, that will get me interested. It has to line up with some key levels. But I'm looking for a liquidity sweep. Now, at the moment, this has been a very heated move from sellers. Pull up the David Goggins meme of him running in 60-degree weather, 60 degrees Celsius weather, and just not stopping. The saying, right, the sellers are getting exhausted. David Goggins is not exhausted. The sellers are still there. They're just recontracting now, right? This is David Goggins taking one sip of water and prepping for his next 100 kilometers or his next 100 miles. So in the form of the correction, you might lead to a little bit of an upside move. Now watch for that recontraction on the Bollinger Band with percentile. And as that expands up again, you probably get the move down. And this is what I'm looking for. I might be getting a little bit greedy as a bear. It's possible. But it is what it is, right? I'm looking for the best risk to reward, the best entry possible. If I see that, if I see the reset over here, David Goggins getting a breath of fresh air, a sip of water, reloading, smashing this back towards the upside, which drops price towards the downside, which equals negative funding over here on, just hold on. No, you have to be gay. He doesn't know who David Goggins is. Please just pull up the internet. Just pull it up. Okay. So that's what we're looking for. Negative funding. We want to see negative funding. And then what I'm looking for is the profile that we've seen at every single major bottom, which means we must sweep the lows. Going in over here and having a look at this, this is what happened previously, right? I wanted to show you this and I have to zoom in quite extensively. Everyone thought Bitcoin bottomed FTX lows, swept one more time, right? Swept that level one more time. Next, go up to the next one, price pumps, obviously, right? After sweeping that level, price pumps. Next one over here, everyone thinks that you have the low. What happens? Price sweeps it. Sweep that low. This is the USDT.D peg. Price pumps after that. Next one over here, everyone thinks that price is bottom. You come off a multi-month correction. One more sweep. Price sweeps the low. Now, what will happen is if you go and coincide this with the fundings, you'll see the funding went incredibly negative there as well. Moving on, let's go to the next one. Everyone thinks the low's in, consolidate, swept one more time, price pumps. Let's go to the next one over here. Everyone thinks it's the bottom, sweep the low, price pumps. There you go. Everyone thinks it's bottom, price sweeps the low, attempts to pump, you come down one more time, and this is more or less where we find ourselves now, right? Price rallies up and hits the low, sweeps it one more time before rallying. So what are we looking at? Everyone thinks the low may be in. Everyone may think that the low is in over here. So will we sweep that? That is the question. Well, what's the level you have to sweep? 80,524. That is the level that you have to sweep, right? So if you do get something like that, and it may take weeks, as you've seen with some of the others, you may do something like that all the way into the end of the year, sweep. If you sweep like that and reclaim, this becomes a super high probability level. It lines up with that macro 50% zone. Tom Lee says 77K. I mean, I like the number 77.7. That's the number of completion. So if we get that, great. But Tom Lee also said a lot of other things like 200K Bitcoin before the end of year. I think he said something like that. 12K ETH before the end of the year. I think he also said something like that. So we're approaching the apex, right? To be clear, we're approaching the apex on the high time frame. The USDT bulls are still in control. Bears are not in control over here. However, that can shift if you start to break below some of these key levels. I'm monitoring as well on the 4-hour time frame. You're currently finding support at that 50 EMA. So if you do lose that 50 EMA, that may open up the possibility for a deeper move down towards the 200. Use this as, call it your compass, your early guide as to where price will most likely go next. The USDT dominance is going to drive things, and I think you're going to get your answer very soon. If we really extend this out, I'm going to go as far as possible. There we go, like that. If we really extend this out, I am on UTC +4, which is UAE time, Dubai time. This is 6 o'clock by Thursday morning, which is probably midnight, late evening US time. You'll absolutely have your answer about which side you've broken out on the USDT dominance over there. Okay, head and shoulders still in play. Any bounce that occurs is likely to fail. And here's your Monday range, right? Very tight trading range over here that's currently forming. Basically, all I do is, like, this is practically what I actually do during the daytime when I turn the show off over here or turn the video off. I just leave these two charts open. I leave this one and I leave this one with the Monday range. So I'm looking to clear whichever side clears here first, probably leads to the opposite direction. And there is always a chance for a fake out. So maybe a fake out looks like this, right? Maybe USDT dominance drops if this is going to play out the bearish case. Maybe the USDT dominance drops, breaks below, shoots back up and reclaims, rallies towards the upside, wrecking everyone. What would that look like on price? That would look like this. That's why I'm monitoring these two charts. Rides it up, sweeps the Monday high, breaks back below. The break back below would coincide with the fake out, which I'm going to draw that in, right? Coincides with the fake out. Let me grab that arrow. There we go. Coincides with the fake out. As soon as that reclaims, I would expect the sweep of the Monday high, which means you have to go short at that point. You have to go short and you have to expect you're coming for the Monday low or possibly even below that. The alternative is true as well. That's why you just got to wait to see which side is going to be taken out first here. If you take out the top side first, break back inside, maybe that's the fake out, which would equate to a sweep below the Monday low, which means you go long. And then you ride it to the top side. Okay. Let's see the guy that didn't know David Goggins. Did he find him? No offense. He's just an absolute legend and a machine. So you look like a manly man. So I mean no offense to you. All right, let's move on. Okay, we've gone through that. Interesting, very interesting, very interesting over here. BTC dominance is still marking down. It's on its way towards the mid-range. And I think hardly anyone's paying attention to this because they just kind of over it. They're over the market. Remember, your coin selection is going to be incredibly difficult when you have 10 million different coins. Maybe there's even more. I don't know how many coins there are, but there's millions and millions and millions of coins. So BTC dominance downtrending is not the same as, unfortunately, the price cycles like 2017 or 2021, where when it went downtrending, you just ape into anything. Throw a dart at a board with a list of coins and you guaranteed you're going to double or triple or even 10x your money. It's like guaranteed. That's not going to be the case this time because Bitcoin has a certain market cap. That drop off over here in BTC dominance means a couple of billion or 100 billion move into select coins, keyword, right? If it gets spread amongst all the different coins, it's nothing. It's a drop of water, right? It's an absolute drop of water into the ocean of altcoins. It's nothing. But interestingly, you see the total 3 divided by Bitcoin marking up. I mean, guys, I will celebrate with you guys if we are in the midst of doing something like this. If we're in the midst of doing something like this, which I don't want to say the swear word, but it is alt season, right? That is the swear word. If that happens, guys, I will celebrate with you. I promise you, I'll throw the biggest party ever. All of you will be invited. We'll hire out a massive beach club here in Dubai and we'll party into the middle of the night. But I just can't think that that's going to be possible with the low liquidity environment that we currently have. But it is interesting, nevertheless, that this is moving towards the upside. This is a massive change of character and a break of structure, higher highs and higher lows. It's happening over here. But the question is, which coins is it going into? Well, the only way that we can get some sort of an edge is we have to go into the Whale Trades website over here, and we have to sort by top 50, and we have to have a look at, you know, the weekly, the dailies, etc. And I just find it difficult to believe that I should be buying Bcash, right? Bitcoin Cash. 24 hours, it's the same thing. 12 hours, it's the same thing. 4 hours, it's still Bitcoin Cash. ENA, I mean, I feel more like buying ENA than Bitcoin Cash over here. Hype, possibly. World Liberty Finance, I'm not interested. SUI, we know, looks incredibly weak. So we can look at the price chart of each individual select altcoin that supposedly the money is flowing into, because you can see big sellers on ETH, big sellers on BTC, on Solana. These are your big sellers, and the buyers are coming into these coins. Alrighty. So let's see. We have a lot to look at over here. So nevertheless, I do think that if you are going to be placing a bet, usually the money will flow like this. The money will flow like this, right? It's always like this. Bitcoin first, large caps or ETH, maybe some of you want to interchange that for Solana, for things like that. And then each pump becomes lower and lower and lower, like a bouncing ball, right? The bouncing ball comes down, hits, first bounce is the biggest, second bounce smaller, 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 until it just flatlines. All right. And the ball has to be picked up again and thrown back down. So we can look at, of course, the ETH BTC chart, which is exactly at the point where we said it should find a bottom. I think that it's better for you to wait for a little bit more confirmation and strength before going in with size. But nevertheless, I think I am willing, based on the ETH USD chart, to at least enter a grid trade. I think you could come back to test these lows, but I'm happy to scale in around this region. So I am going to do that on ETH. Remember, we closed this trade just before this massive dump. I said I didn't like what I'm seeing. We had a big ETH trade open over here. It was like 30% of the overall portfolio on pionex, and I actually closed it. And I actually think I'm ready to reopen. So we're going to do that. Okay, ETH USD. I'm going to open that trade again. And then we'll look if there's any other opportunities. So do not go anywhere. Do not go anywhere. Okay, let's go. So we need a futures grid. We are doing our own strategy, customized, doing a long strategy. And I'm going to... I don't want to put the grid all the way down, even though there's a possibility. Like, I'd rather just add capital and adjust the grid if it dropped below. For now, I kind of just want to buy down into this region over here. This is all I want to buy down to. 2,491. So 2,491 will be my lowest price. My highest price, this is an interesting one. Remember the way that the grids are designed, you have to think of it like a risk to reward ratio like this. You have to think of it like that. So if we enter into this trade, and I'll change the brightness over here to make it a bit easier for you guys to see. Let's just quickly brighten that up. There we go. Let's just do that. And let's just do that. There we go. So you need to think it will be buying down into the red, and it will be selling. So even if you set it for the highs over there, 4,695, that doesn't mean that it only sells when it hits there. So price will set up a whole lot of grids. It will buy. As soon as it crosses into the green, it will sell. If I had to set this up as a manual trade, I'd probably only be going for the TP into this candle over here, which is about 3,400. So for now, I'm going to set up like this, which means my grids will buy all the way down and then sell all the way up if price gets there. That's what I'm doing. That's currently the trade setup, which means my low price, 2,491, my high price, 4,695. And I'm going to put in about 250 grids here. There we go. So as you can see, green is where it's buying into, red is where it's selling. And my investment, I'm keeping it relatively low leverage on 3x. For now, I'm going to put in about 15% of this trading account. Okay. Why not 5,000 for the high price? Because we can always adjust it the same way that even though theoretically if price continues to mark down, then the next lows I would say it would come down to is here. This is why I've only entered 15% of the account. So I'm reserving the room for error in case this does this. If this does this, and I can see it's not going to reclaim, I will adjust the grids down to this low level, and then I'll allocate more margin down there. And the same is true for the upside. If, for example, I see that everything is back on, which I think is unlikely, but if it is all back on and this looks like it's going to moon to 10, 12K, whatever the number is, you know, I'll reallocate. I'll reallocate more and I'll adjust the grid. So for now, we have that trade on the table. We got ETH, we got gold, we got the MicroStrategy, which is up 200% on that short trade as well. Okay. Alrighty. So we got that on the table. Let's see. Let me check your guys' comments. Alrighty. Let me check your comments over here. Okay. We need to remember, we said not to forget 𝗏𝗏. Let's pull up 𝗏𝗏. Now is probably a good time to pull up 𝗏𝗏. Okay, so that's the only trade that I'm putting on right now. We'll see if there's anything else. Don't go anywhere. 𝗏𝗏, USDT. Which one should we utilize? I mean, they're all going to have just been listed, so we're probably better off going on Bybit. Seriously, already? Is this for real? Is this the right 𝗏𝗏? No, this can't be. That's June 2024. Let's just grab it from here. See, it's already trending. 𝗏𝗏. Let's just grab it from here. It's going to be easier. Look, and we may as well just look at it on this chart. We don't need trading view because it just launched. But as you can see, it's just in an uptrend. Very strong, fully diluted valuation, 4.4 billion. In my experience, and I've told you this story before and I'll tell it to you again. In my experience, price tends to set a major high. Like you let it run, let it do its thing. They orchestrate the pump, and then it will pull back minimum 60%. Crypto most of the time 70%, and in some cases over 80% before creating a rounded bottom and finding a low. So if you're interested in this, I think it's worthwhile for low time frame trades. Do they have perpetuals on it? Markets, perpetuals. They do. Okay, there is perps on it, so you can trade perps, futures, perps. Okay, spot. What about spot? If you just want to buy spot, I mean, the best exchange that it's on over here for spot is Bybit. If you do want to support the channel with Bybit, there's a link below. Go through over here, click the link to Bybit, and you can claim up to a $30,000 sign-up bonus. You're getting $50 guaranteed, right? When you sign up on Bybit, you get $50 guaranteed. If you do want to put that into 𝗏𝗏 spot. Okay. So remember, very few people got into the seed round when it comes to 𝗏𝗏. Quick look over here at XRP. Decent bounce, but a lot of work to be done. Same levels, it needs to get above 250. Let's quickly look at some of the others. Solana is still working its way up. It's got massive resistance at 153. We still have weakness over here from Sui. It could run up to about 182, but even struggling over there at that high. We got Sonic, needs to go range bound for a while. It's still in an aggressive downtrend. Say also still in a downtrend, really poor. Cardano, very poor, straight down. AVAX, very poor, straight down. Ton, bad. Casper coming into resistance. Tron, due for a bounce, but in a strong downtrend. Plasma, wrecked. Pump, finding key support. Needs to be range bound for a little bit further. A little bit longer over there. Okay. Guys, I have a special announcement for you today. If you want to find out more, it's linked in the description below. Let's just go down where you see over here, follow Kyle. You might notice there is a YouTube video over there. There is a YouTube video over there. Something new, a new beginning. If you want to find out what it's about, subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the channel. I'll see you all on the next one. It is linked below underneath that section over there. Make sure you go and watch that. Follow Kyle. It says subscribe to the channel. Click the video, watch it, like it, comment on it. Let me know your thoughts. There is a new beginning. I'll see you on the next one. Have a good day and cheers for now.